Welcome to the Life's Best Medicine podcast, where we are finding hope and healing one episode at a time. No appointment needed, no rubber gloves, and no coping. Just a healthy dose of life lessons to help equip you for this wild journey we call life. Hey everyone, this is a friendly reminder that we are here for entertainment purposes only. We may not even be that entertaining at times, but this is not medical advice. Talk to your doctor, check with your healthcare professionals before making any lifestyle changes or medicine changes. What we're talking about is our clinical experience and what we've seen. And so if you really want our advice, you can consult us. You can actually consult me as a doctor, or you can consult my guest and get all your questions answered. But we can't give free medical advice because we can't pay our bills with that, but we can help to educate you a bit and allow you to think a little bit, and always reach out to your medical professional before making any lifestyle changes. Thank you. Hey everyone, it's September already. The kids are going back to school. We have to get ready for the holidays and all that stuff. Our summer's pretty much behind us. And so I'm very thankful that we have some great episodes that will keep us company and get us back on track and get ready for the holidays and hopefully survive the holidays. We need some tricks of the trade to get us through. And so I want to thank Health Code, Get Health, GETHLTH.com for helping us to have tons of recipes and baked goods, things like that to get us through the holidays so we can stay healthy and not have to start next year trying to get our pants to fit again and all that kind of stuff. So staying active with them, and also with Keto Mojo, keto-mojo.com, for us to track our sugars and ketones and keep us healthy during the holidays. And both have great websites. Even if you're not using their products, I would recommend going to their websites, taking a look at the educational materials, the recipes, and a lot of the blogs. Ben Bickman has been contributing, and so there's a lot of really great information there. But please support them also. They're supporting this podcast and bringing these great stories to you. So I just want to thank my sponsors, and now on with the show. Hello and welcome back to the Life's Best Medicine podcast. Today I have a story, a couple here that I've interviewed on Low Carb MD, and you go back, and I can't remember the episode number, but go back and just Google it on Low Carb MD. Brad and Maggie Jones, they have an amazing story about survivorship and helping other people, and they're with the cancer revolution. And so let's just go back. Let's talk about how life was pre-diagnosis, relationship pre-diagnosis. I'll let one of you just jump in and give people a background on your story.
Awesome. I'll take it from here. Brad and I had been living in LA for, together almost 15 years at the time, when we decided to make a change and move to Hong Kong. And this was exactly 1 week before my 40th birthday. We'd never been to Asia before. We'd certainly never been to Hong Kong before. But again, something new in life. We were almost 40. I was. And exactly 1 month after my 40th birthday, I was diagnosed with terminal stage 4 lung cancer that by then had spread to multiple tumors in my brain, my eye, dozens of lymph nodes throughout my neck, chest, abdomen. The prognosis, or at least the median survival rate with standard of care, was 6 to 8 months at the time. I was young, I was healthy, maybe I would make a year. Ultimately for me, I just wanted to make it to the end of Game of Thrones. But eventually that really wasn't the right goal. So yeah, a lot in life changed rapidly. I didn't quit my job at first, but I remember in that first couple of days after the diagnosis, that crazy rush where I was a non-smoker. I was just turning 40. I felt like I had my whole life ahead of me, and everything was going to be different. And all I wanted at the time was to be a good patient and to die well and make Brad and my doctors proud of me. I remember going out to dinner on that Thursday after my Monday diagnosis and telling Brad that like it was okay if I died because I'd lived just the best life with so much love and so many adventures already. And we're both holding back tears and like, let's not even talk about it.
Yeah, it's
And
so
then
hard. It's so hard. Those kind of things. Like I remember when my wife and I did our trust, and I was thinking, this is so weird. Like, who would take care of our kids? And when you have it slammed in your face like that, because it's just a morbid thoughts start coming up. And you're like, wow, what would happen if we both died somewhere? And then
yeah.
then when you get the diagnosis, you say, oh my gosh, this is like real now. There's a legit, chance I lose my wife and I lose my life.
Yeah. I think we both were trying to be strong for the other. I remember like, I mean, I would just sort of like hide and cry so she wouldn't see me, like I'd be like, hey, Maggie, I'm gonna take a walk, like just like walk through we had a park that wasn't too far from where we lived in Hong Kong. And I would just walk through this park, just tears like streaming down my face, right? Just kind of trying to like recompose myself. So,
and I knew even then that it's so much harder for the person left behind because I'd be dead. But it's the caretaker who has to deal with the lifetime afterwards. And so I tried to be sympathetic to that also. But it was just a big swirl of emotions, I think.
yeah, no, for sure. And I mean, uh it's kind of interesting to hear her tell the story now where she was like, I just wanted to be like a good patient and like go away quietly. I'm like, that's not the Maggie that I know that I married.
Well, and it didn't even last a week because that first weekend he took me away to a place on the beach and I started reading my cancer books. And that is when I started thinking that maybe I don't have to die.
That's when the real Maggie came out.
The 5-year survival rate for somebody with lung cancer that spread to the brain at the time was under 1%, which means it rounds to zero. I just read a study on Friday that it's now 4.7%. So things are improving in the lung cancer spread to the brain. And it will be 5 years for me next month. But I was thinking like, hey, I could be one of these 0%. I mean, 1,000 is 0% of a million. Why not? I'm young. I'm willing to do what it takes. And so I started, the first books I was reading talked about radical diet change and fasting and things like that. And even some things that my allopathic Western mind rebelled against, like coming to terms with your emotions and spirituality and things like that. And I did think, well, I'll save that for later. And right now, let's look at what I can do with my diet. And I decided that Sunday that I wasn't going to put anything inside my body that I couldn't find a PubMed article about, confirming that it was good for my healthy cells and bad for my cancer. And I sent poor Brad running around the streets of Hong Kong looking for like organic.
That's a little dramatic. I mean, in Hong Kong, it's just harder to find organic stuff. I mean, it's not like impossible, but it was just like, yeah, one grocery store had like sweet, like had peppers, bell peppers, and another grocery store would have like zucchini and like lettuce, right? So it's just like trying to like put together a meal of all organic food was just a little bit of
Especially
it was an
the
adventure. Yeah.
broccoli sprouts and all the crazy things we ended
Yeah.
up doing our
Yeah.
own. But it brought us together, I think. And just for your audience, I want you to know that it was exactly 1 year after diagnosis that I was cancer free. Hong Kong Adventist Hospital told me I was no evidence of disease. We got a second opinion in Seattle where they use no active disease. But
Yeah.
it's been almost 4 years now, no
Yeah.
active disease. But I do have brain radiation necrosis from the conventional treatment, the 2 rounds of stereotactic radiosurgery to treat 4 tumors in my brain. That does cause some aphasia sometimes. So when you hear me tripping over my words, that's why.
Yeah. And I think that one of the main things that we just have left out here is that what Maggie did in addition to her standard of care was she did a very strict ketogenic diet regimen and then fasting. So she would fast 3 days a week, one meal a day, 4 days a week. Do I have that right?
Yeah, actually, I would fast essentially 44 hours from Sunday evening to Tuesday evening
Okay.
every week. And then OMAD until the weekend where I'd have 2 meals. And yeah, once a month or so, I'd have a 3-day fast. And once a year, we still do a longer fast, usually 5 to 7 days. The longest I've gone is 10 days.
Yeah. And you didn't even get like met the metformin at that, or when did you get the metformin?
I did about 6 months into my diagnosis. I started
Okay.
off-label drugs. And so these are things like metformin and benzosol, atorvastatin, and doxycycline that have been shown to help improve the efficacy of the kind of chemo I was on any kind of chemo generally in these studies, and radiation. And so I personally credit all these metabolic treatments with my results. And I did eventually go back and touch on some of those internal, emotional, spiritual aspects that I also now know have been important to maintaining my healing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a huge deal. I mean, people don't, I mean, I just gave a talk on this stuff and, and I didn't appreciate it. I appreciate you kind of know, but what does the data say and what does the science say? And that's a huge thing. And, so many people who struggle with cancer have held on to a lot of bitterness or childhood abuse. And I mean, all those things actually increase your risk of cancer, especially lung cancer, substantially. And so
Mhm.
when you go through hard life stuff, yeah, there's data on this. And
Yeah.
obviously diabetes and strokes and heart attacks and constant high blood pressure and sympathetic overload with always being stressed and worried. And it's been really eye-opening for me and almost embarrassing that 20 years of practice and I really never really
Yeah.
didn't grasp how important it is relationship and spiritual health and emotional health. And that's why I started this podcast as a result of, people said, we just want to talk about keto. I go, okay, once you're keto and you fight with everyone in the world and you're a miserable person, like really, I mean, the diet's not going to fix your life. And so at some point we have to figure out how do I get my life right? And that's kind of what
Yeah.
you do. When you get a terminal diagnosis, you go, okay, does it really matter about who's winning the next election or what, like, politics and locally? And you start thinking differently, I think. And a lot of people, when you look at people who were cured, there's actually a book called Cured that I just listened to, and they were talking about that. People say, I'm all in whatever. I'm going all vegan or all meat or all whatever, and or spiritual healing or whatever it is. And it seems like people go, okay, you know what? I'm all in. I'm going to do what it takes. Someone like you, Maggie, who says, okay, let me look at my options. I'm not just folding up the tent right now. And so it is a huge deal for people.
Yeah. And for me,
And
the biggest thing I knew initially was stress. And that's something that we all face in this lifestyle in America and Hong Kong. And so I knew I had to address that. Brad was so helpful. And at the time, I was only going by what I could find in PubMed. And so I knew mindfulness based stress reduction had a lot of studies about it and how it can at least improve quality of life.
Yeah.
I had actually been on anxiety medication for about 5 years up until my diagnosis. And let me tell you, what a weird time to stop taking your anxiety meds when you find out you have a terminal diagnosis. But Brad joined me in the MSBR training. We started meditating, yoga, started coming to, finding better ways to communicate with each other. And ultimately, I think we can confidently say that our relationship has grown so much stronger since the diagnosis, so much
yeah,
stronger.
and is that like let's dive into that a little bit. Like, what was the relationship that you just take each other? How long were you married for, first of all, when you get the diagnosis? And did you take each other for granted and kind of go, they're always going to be there like we all do? And then all of a sudden you go, wait a minute, like we may not be here in
Yeah.
5 months.
Well, we got married in 2010. We had a very long on off kind of courting. So
seven
we'd been
years
seven
before we got
years of
married.
dating before we got married. And then her diagnosis was in 2018. So it was around 15 years that we had been kind of together, and married for 8 years at that point. And yeah, I mean, I don't know. It certainly wasn't like, I mean, I was like literally like when I proposed to her, I was like, in my mind, I was running through this idea. I'm like, is this the person that I want to sort of like sit in a rocking chair with, like on a front porch, like when we're like old and, like just holding hands. And I was like, yeah, this is the person that I want to do that with.
Side by
And
side bathtubs, like a
yeah, oh
Cialis
yeah,
commercial.
Yeah, 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 all that
yeah.
stuff. Yeah, and you have to think about those things,
Yeah.
and it's important. But over time, the luster wears off a little bit, and you kind of are, that's where the deeper relationship comes in, right? Not just the physical attraction and all that. But, just to get that
Yeah.
diagnosis, you go, my goodness, and you think, okay. And it's a hard thing because the other thing that comes up a lot is they can say, well, we don't want you to give people false hope, right? And so, like, I want some hope, though. I mean,
I
say, hey,
honestly, I mean, I know as a doctor you have different rules, but I mean, the idea of taking hope away, I don't know. Our experience with cancer patients has been more cancer patients have had hope dashed from them, especially by doctors by giving like a prognosis, than have have been given hope, like like you can do this, like there's you have something to live for.
Or even more
Um,
importantly, you can have a great life. I mean, we are all under the
yeah,
sword. Like we could all die anytime. But I think just explaining that we can still enjoy every moment and live in this present, like that's what's missing. I I don't know if I ever really thought, yeah, I did really think that I would make it this long. But I always thought, even if I didn't, just enjoy the moment and be here now. And I think a lot of that is lacking from
yeah,
cancer patient mental care.
and I was just going to add that like even Maggie's life is substantially changed. She's not back 100% to where she was before. Like she's got this sort of fallout from the radiation, and we know other cancer patients that it's like you kind of always have that what is it, that little ghost of this idea that your cancer could come back. And so it's not, you don't go back, you don't like cure it and go back to what you did before. You kind of go through and onto something new, a different life. And I think that that just is something that people can strive for.
I think
uh,
that's the most important thing is so many people do get over their current cancer and then they think they can just go back to the lifestyle they had before, the one that gave them
yeah,
cancer.
Well,
And
it's
then
the same thing with weight loss too. Like people lose weight and they go, I'll just go back to what I was doing before because it worked terribly. So I'm going to go back and do that again. So a lot of people go, how long am I doing this for? When's the wedding? When's the pictures? And then I'm going back. And so
yeah.
it's a hard thing when you get through cancer. Hey, I didn't turn off my lights for dramatic effect. Somehow my sensor in here, like it's so
thought we're
crazy.
doing
Like in
like
the
a
middle of a
horror
conversation,
story
I want to
podcast.
move
You're
to
not
make it
moving
go back
around
on. I
enough.
can't, I'm
Yeah.
trying to, I got to move for a second. I'm just going to pause just for 1 second here.
Desk.
Yeah, and I look better in the dark, I guess. So you guys are getting a little. I'm like they're gonna have to suffer with me through this thing, but I didn't want to pause it because it's so great what you're saying and it's so important. I mean, all these aspects that Western medicine we forgot about the emotional part of it. Like when you get a diagnosis, I've had people get diagnosed with terminal cancer over the phone, right, via
Oh my
Zoom.
gosh, oh
Like
my
not even someone
gosh.
there they could put their arm on their shoulder and the importance of human contact
Yeah,
and
that's
and I see some of the experts that are in the keto and low carb community, and I see their compassion and how they have it for people. And I'm just surprised, like what made you all of a sudden say, okay, I'm going to look into this metabolic aspects of cancer, not look at the standard of care stuff, and because that's the argument people are going to have. They're going to go, okay, wait a minute. So you're telling people not to do certain treatments and to go and pray or go and work on your relationship and watch your
yeah,
stress, like that is super dangerous from a Western perspective, right? And fasting, like when you talk about
Mm.
fasting, people go, "Wait a minute!" Like weight loss, cachexia is what we worry about, and so I don't know what to do with it, but I get sent all these like these supplements from like some of the big pharma companies. It's all seed oils and terrible stuff. All you look at the
Yeah.
ingredients on the back, and it's like 10,000 things in there, and you're like, man, I don't want to give that to someone with cancer. So how do you do it? Like, how do you like when people say what you're doing is dangerous because you're telling people not to get the standard of care or doing this as a supplement during standard of care? I think it's important that we make that distinction.
I would never tell anybody to avoid the standard of care if that's what resonates with them. Like everybody has to make their own decision. For me, like I mentioned, when I was diagnosed, I was very, very Western. I really thought that allopathic medicine was the way to go, that everything that mattered is was worth knowing we discovered in the last 70 years. But luckily, we were living in Hong Kong where TCM, traditional Chinese medicine, is medicine. And I started to think, like, well, maybe things that we've been using as medicine for the last 3,000 years might have some credibility too. And I started to open my mind a little bit. And ultimately, what helped me is just my attitude where I just think I'm right about everything. And thankfully, I did find metabolic
Brad's like,
treatments.
no comment, no comment. I'm not saying nothing right here on the live podcast here. Yeah, for
And it's
sure.
terrible because if Brad had discovered it first and he brought it to me, I would have been so stubborn about like, no, I'll do it myself. So
yeah,
it's great that I found it myself. And I just stumbled on the right books to read, things like Tripping Over Truth by Travis Christofferson, brought me into the Cancer as a Metabolic Disease by Dr. Thomas Seyfried. And going down that rabbit hole was wonderful for me. But it was a lot to read. I mean, I was still working full time in a stressful position as a media executive in Hong Kong. And luckily for me, I love reading and I love research and getting into those articles, but I realized that that's not realistic for a lot of newly diagnosed cancer patients, especially with brain tumors. It can affect your cognition. And not to get ahead of ourselves, but that really is the reason that we decided to make the docuseries, to make it more easily digestible for people.
Yeah, just in watching that, it was so dramatic. Watching the history of cancer research, the historical aspects of this, and this is what they thought before. And it's so ironic too, because looking at low carb and keto, when you look at it from a diabetes management, it's like you go back pre-insulin, and that's exactly what they did. They were saying,
Yeah.
look, eat mutton, eat fat, eat this, and get rid of the carbohydrates, and they knew it inherently back then, right?
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden
Yes.
everything changes and they go, you're crazy. There's a fad diet. It's like, well, that's what they did for the 3,000
Yeah.
years before. That's the only treatment they really had. So why do we
Yeah.
drop that out? And, doing the standard of care, and you go, okay. But sometimes you go, wait a minute. If the standard of care is a horrible outcome, if I got 5 months to live, right, with going through all this
Yeah.
stuff, it's like, okay, do I want to have quality of life? And, probably for me, honestly, if I got diagnosed with a terminal illness, I'm not going to waste my time researching. I'm going to go sit by the porch. I'm going to go for walks and do stuff, right? Because, but I think it's one of that fight or flight. So you chose to fight and say, okay, I'm going to like look into this and dive into it. And even if I die, I'm going to at least think I did the best thing I could possibly do.
And it
Yeah.
gave me power. I felt very empowered that I had some kind of agency in my diagnosis. And to answer your original question, how it was in society, my doctors didn't know anything about it. They didn't really care. They were just following the flow chart, very much like this mutation, take this drug, whatever. Only had to see them once a month. And the one doctor who I did tell I was thinking about keto, he said, oh, that's like some low fat diet, right? Yeah, that should be fine. And it's like, okay, fine. And then I never told him I was fasting. I never told them anything. I decided that I was my best doctor and that they were just there to prescribe me medicines, help me out. I would take advantage of their knowledge and their expertise, but I was the one making the decisions.
I was going to just add, this is mostly the Hong Kong doctors, but then when we
Yes.
came over to the United States and she did tell her doctor, her oncologist, what exactly she was doing, he was just like, well, you're just like an outlier. That doesn't have anything to do with you. Like, it just he just was in complete disbelief that had anything to do with, with her. And I mean, she said at the beginning, like someone with her diagnosis that a 1% chance of making it to 5 years.
Less than
Also, yeah, I mean, because sometimes people are like, well, you did the standard of care with this. It's like, yeah, she did, but she had resistance to her first drug within a couple of months. There was only one other drug left on the market that she tried, and we're not even sure at this point, like when the resistance kicked in or if it's kicked in. Like sometimes she takes the pills, sometimes she doesn't, but it's just this idea that doctors, getting back to where I started there, that doctors just don't want to know about this. If they don't know about it to begin with, they don't want to hear about
are
it.
incredible and care and bring information to their clients. Thank you, Dr. Brian.
Yeah, it's really
Yes.
important. I mean,
Yeah, of course. No. I meant, of course, present company excluded. We're talking about a bigger picture here. Yeah.
No, it's true though. It's
Yeah.
true because like someone read something 30 years ago in med school, and now all of a sudden they're like not deviating. Instead of saying, okay,
Yeah.
if I'm giving you a 5-month survival, I want to try everything outside. If you think acupuncture, whatever you think helps you, try it. And if it does help you,
Yes.
we're happy. I have a friend who I was good friends with his brother actually, and his brother said, he's just not himself. I don't know if he's depressed. Can you just like do labs on him? I do labs on him, and they go, you have no blood. Yeah, like your blood counts. So he had something called myelodysplasia. The
Oh, yes.
1 year survival is dismal. Now it's like I think it's about 10 years later now. And I tried to talk. I go, you should just do a bone marrow transplant. You should do all this stuff. And he goes, no, I've had a good life. I like what you said. I'm a man of faith. If God's gonna take me, he's gonna take me out. I'm like, okay, but we have stuff we could do to you can have 100% cure if it works. He goes, yeah, but if it doesn't work, I have 100% death rate too, right? So we had these discussions. I go, if you're willing, I'm like, I'm not gonna force anything on you. And he's still going. So I was like, well, he was right. I mean,
Yeah.
he's still
Yeah.
functional. He's still, with his grandkids, and he's out doing stuff. And you go, okay, like, but part of it is he goes, I'm not going to be stressed, and like he doesn't worry about anything. I can't get him to come in and get labs done. I have to drag him in. But the
Nice.
fact that he is doing so well, it's a miracle, really. I mean, I've never seen anything like this. But part of it's like, okay, I'm going to cut my stress down. I'm going to like enjoy life. I'm going to, have the moments I have, and
Yeah.
if I have a terminal disease, I do. But fear wasn't. I mean, I'm sure it was deep down, but really, he goes, okay, like kind of what you're saying is that I've had a good life. I don't need this stress in my life. I don't need this stressful job. But it's stress. Like you think about it, you're in that situation. You're gonna have a lot of costs being incurred, and you quit your job. That's a financial thing, and you go, okay, how do I like what's going to happen in the long run? Like
Yeah,
what
especially
happens to
if
my
that's
husband,
your
right?
insurance, right? Like if you cut your
in
insurance, like,
America.
yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, but that's
Yeah.
true. That's what I'm
Yeah.
wondering is like that's a stressful thing to do. But you realize inherently that stress was a killer for you.
Yeah, because you look at just me, and I thought I was generally healthy in my eating. I'm young. I wasn't a smoker. I was like, why would I get this? And I know it's a combination of so many factors. It was the stress. It was definitely my alcohol enthusiasm to deal with the stress. I was drinking like a bottle of wine every night. It was not caring about my body the way it wanted to be cared about. And there's a wonderful woman, Dr. Naisha Winters, whose book also helped me, explaining that cancer can be a messenger. And I realized that's what it is for me. It was my body just screaming as loud as it could, saying, I've been trying to tell you something is wrong. It is very, very wrong. And so giving
That's a huge point too. And that was one thing that, for me giving this talk on stress and how it affects us, like, okay, I have a stressed out person. Now all of a sudden I'm telling you stress is killing you. Like that's not a good combination, right? Because it's more
Yeah.
stressful. Like I'm killing myself doing all this stuff. But part of it's being able to say, okay, where can I reassess? Like for me, I don't know how much of my story, but I was in a standard practice working 18-hour days, getting up, getting 4 or 5 hours of sleep, and like stressing out when I spent time with
Yeah.
family because I have so much to do. Like it was on full speed the whole time without taking my foot off the accelerator, and I thought about it, even the indie people take their foot off the accelerator on the turns, and we don't, and somehow we think we're just going to be out of control our whole life. So part of that is reassessing, is it worth it? Like, is it worth it? Do I really, I mean, do I live for money? I really don't. I want to help people. And am I effective in that? So a lot of people just are reassessing. I think after these last 3 years too of locking down and all this stuff we went through, we start realizing the importance of community, the importance of helping each other. And what you're doing is so huge. That's why I was so excited to hear about it, because people need to say, okay, I have metastatic lung cancer. Oh, here's Maggie who had it. Here's her story. Right there. It's not that you just give up hope. And I think that's part of it. Is some of it, our life is so, like someone says, you have 5 months to live, and we believe 5 months. Right. And then your
yeah,
brain, it's just like when we plateau weight
Yeah.
loss wise, you think I can never get below this weight, and then when you get below it, you're like, oh my gosh, finally, what happened? And sometimes just believing it's going to happen, or being positive makes a difference.
everyone says listen to your doctors, and I'm like, yeah, but maybe not when they tell you that you only have a few months to live. You don't have to listen to that.
Actually, and Maggie talks all the time about the placebo effect and this idea that, like, hey, if you think it's helping you, there's a good chance it's helping you, right? You mentioned it too. It's like you just,
It will help you.
yeah.
I have this argument with my current oncologist where, things like keto, even though there's great evidence for them, it's not randomized, double blind, placebo controlled, even though most chemos aren't either. So I'll just say, well, what if it's placebo? I believe this is helping me. It's not going to hurt me. You can tell me that. So why can't you just give it to me?
Yeah, and then if their argument is like, "Oh, we're worried about your heart," it's like, "Okay, I have metastatic lung cancer. I'm not really worried about dying of a heart attack, right?" I mean, that would be the less of two evils. Trust me.
I
You
got
know?
like, arguments about cholesterol,
Yeah, cholesterol. Yeah.
I was like, wait, I'm supposed to be dead by June, and you're worried about my cholesterol? Like, I
Yeah.
would love to have a heart attack at 60. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, and you start looking at all these things, and you realize, if we cut and it's the crazy thing is that we don't put two and two together. You go, okay, if I get a cancer diagnosis, my life, I've never had this happen. I'm just going to be in the dark.
There's just
That's
so
it.
much energy in this conversation.
So I'm just so enthralled, I'm not moving enough.
Yeah.
So, uh, if you get diagnosed with cancer, and you start saying, okay, if I can cut my stress, get in touch with my spirituality, like kind of come to terms with life and what my purpose is and all this, like if that works for reversing cancer, then wouldn't it help in preventing cancer also? Is like, I'm not going to stress out and worry about stuff and have bitterness towards my fellow man and all these kind of things. It's amazing no one makes that connection. Like, let's prevent it rather than wait till you blow up your engine and try to get your engine back.
Yes. And I just look at this world that we live in now and the things that are valued, like not getting enough sleep and working all the time and certain just the material measures of success. And that's what was so important to me when, before my diagnosis. And so if we could change some of that for society, and then, like you say, I think the last 3 years have been a great step in that direction. But it's not a coincidence that cancer, especially cancer among younger people, has increased so dramatically in the last 10 years. You would know better than I do.
Yeah, and cutting out all the mental stuff and cutting out refined carbs
and the sugar and seed oils.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and doing the whole picture, like you were saying, look, I was stressed. I'm drinking a bottle of wine every night. So we know based on the data, if you drink a lot of wine to calm your nerves down at night, your sleep is not as good. Your sleep is not as good. Your stress level goes up. So they actually did a study during COVID and looked at this and said, okay, if you have a stressful day at work and you're worried about lockdowns and you're fighting with your wife or husband or whatever, then drink wine until you feel good. And then they would drink more and more every day. But every subsequent day, they were more stressed. And then they needed more wine. And then it got into this huge snowball. And then they tapered them down and they did better and their sleep got better and their stress level. We know it inherently affects sleep. So a lot of people are so stressed, they can't fall asleep unless they drink. But guess what? At 2 a.m, you wake up and you're laying there worrying about life again. And so, all these things. And that's why, I'm so happy to have you on to talk about this, because that's why I did this podcast. Because if I talked about this stuff on Low Carb MD, they're like, why are you talking about this stuff? It has nothing to do with low carb. But yeah, guess what? If you're stressed out, you're going to eat, you inherently, I'm looking at the study. If you're stressed out, not sleeping, you're going to crave more carbohydrates. You eat more carbohydrates, you get inflamed in your brain. This whole thing of Chris Palmer and all this stuff. Yeah, and you're stressed and you're tense and you don't sleep. Glucose goes up. Your stress hormones are through the roof and you're on adrenaline rush all day long. And guess what? We're not designed for that. We need to take, I have people like a guy I have yesterday, young executive, super successful guy, tons of money. He goes, I don't sleep at night because I'm stressed. And and so it's a hard thing. He goes, you know what though? If I meditate for 15 minutes during the day, I sleep great that night, but I don't do it because I'm so busy all the time. It's like, well, right? Yeah. It tells you something. It's like that. And he's not a big drinker either. So that's a good thing. But you start looking at it and going, okay, if I'm on overdrive stress load all the time, it's a hard, and especially if you're wired that way. Like Maggie, you're like a type A, like research, you get everything done and you don't. And it's such a hard thing,
So hard.
It's such a hard thing. And then you have to deal with people like me who are like type C or whatever, because, my office manager, she's like, did you do this? Like everything's like, I'm like, okay, that doesn't have to be done today. Don't worry about it. Right. Well, no. So some people just don't worry. And some people are just like worried all the time. Like once there's an earthquake, once, you saw it when we were in San Diego giving that talk. It's like, there's a hurricane coming. Half the people leave in the middle of the night to get out of there. And which is, I'm not, it's a smart thing to do. You know what, you're going to miss your flights. You got to work on Monday.
Yeah.
But, but some people are like worried like about everything. And they just can't enjoy the moment.
Yeah. I remember I was like, it's Southern California, rain in Southern California. I was like,
that's a disaster.
We lived there for 20 years. I never saw anything like a hurricane, and I lived in Atlanta for a long time, so I knew what a hurricane was. So I was like, yeah, I don't think we're let's not stress about it. Exactly. Like, let's not worry about it.
That's Brad. Yeah. Brad is like you. I was very much a planner and I didn't feel like I was stressing, but I mean, obviously the results speak for themselves. We know what it was. And to the point about meditation, there's a great Zen Buddhist joke about the man who goes up and saying, I don't have time to meditate 20 minutes. And he's like, totally fine. You must meditate for an hour or something. Or if you don't have time for it, that's when you need it.
Yeah. And if people are listening and you think, oh, that doesn't apply to me, you better listen closer, because I'm telling you, a lot of us don't even realize it, that our car alarm's going off all day and we're stressed and worried about it all day long. Yeah. And our minds don't shut down at all. And I see it from a metabolic standpoint, because it seems like, and especially with what you're talking about, is a lot of this stuff comes right back to the mitochondria, the energy centers of the cell. And if you burn them out, you're in trouble from a metabolic, diabetes, obesity, all these things. And you go, okay, maybe you just have to enjoy the moment sometimes and not worry about next Tuesday's meeting and worry about what's happening in 2 months from now, And it's funny because my wife's more like you, Maggie, and she's like, hey, there's something on your calendar in October. I'm like, October? might not even be alive in October. I'm not worrying about that
Yeah.
yet, right? You know what I mean? It's so funny because like we share
Yeah.
a calendar, and it's
We
funny because
literally just planned November. I'm like
Last
last
night.
night. I was like, Maggie, can we wait till tomorrow to talk about this? Yeah.
I'm a work in progress.
yeah, but it's
So
good to be tuned into and go, okay, I'm wired this way. What do I do? Whether it's sauna, jacuzzi, relaxing, fasting, and or just cutting out processed foods as much
yeah.
as possible. So, okay, I'm gonna give my body the best chance at survival. And just yesterday, that guy says, it's almost like, and it's I've been saying this for years. It's like if we get out of our own way, we just heal, huh? I'm like, yeah, yeah. I mean,
That's
sometimes
the
we just
way.
stop doing dumb stuff, and you heal.
Yeah.
It's amazing, right?
Brian, when do you find time to do meditation? What's your meditation schedule at all?
Well, I do prayer, right? I spend time with God, and I go, okay, like as a matter of fact, it's funny because my wife, I was in Arizona. I have a place in Arizona. I'm making a slow transition that way, and I'm sitting there on the porch with my coffee. And my wife and I always do like the people who were there before us left us the rock. It's like these gliders that are super nice. So I'm sitting out there having my coffee, and all of a sudden it's like, "Why are you out there without your wife having coffee?" And I was like, "What is that?" And it was my ring behind me. It was my wife's. It triggered the ring, and she's like, "I'm so sad. I'm not there with you having coffee. Darn it." So we had a nice conversation. But but you find your peace. I mean, for me, I've gotten way better at finding my peace and going, okay, look, I can't fix this problem. I'm going to stress. So, it's kind of like the Buddhist joke. There's a Christian joke that says, like, someone comes in with all their burns and their struggles, and they come up to the altar and they pray to God, take these burns from me. And the God says, okay, I'll take the burns from me. And then they grab all the burns and walk out with them again. Because it's true. So many times we go, I have all these burdens and I want to get rid of them, but I can't let go because I'm too stressed. I'm too worried. I can't, I got to take care of all this stuff first. So sometimes you have to say, okay, I got to drop these burdens. I can't sit here and worry about stuff that I have no control over. And, Mark Twain, I use his quote, and he was basically saying, like, if you're not going to do, if you're going to worry and be stressed about something, do something about it. And if you can't do something about it, you have to reassess how important it is. And he goes, I've had a lot of catastrophes in my life, but most of them never happened. Because we're
I
thinking
love
about
that
all
quote.
these things that are
Yes.
going to happen if I don't do this, if I don't do, like, and it's one of those things we get so caught up in life that, I trust me, I know, and I think about it a lot now because at my old office, I was so busy, I didn't even have time to pray or meditate because I was like, there's three people
Yeah.
waiting. I'm always like, you're on overdrive, and the end of the day, you go, man, I didn't even like meditate. I didn't even think about something positive. And so there's stuff out there. Like when I did research for this talk, I got through like half of my slides. I've never had that happen before because I had so many slides on data on sleep and stress and alcohol use and not breathing, just breathing. I have people just breathe. Like I have
Yeah.
people, they're I sense it. Like when I meet someone the first time, I'm like, they're going to struggle because you're a single mom and you're stressed and you got all these things, you're not sleeping, you don't have time to prepare your meals, you're on such an overwhelmed in such an overwhelmed state that even if you do the keto diet perfectly, right, even if you do it
I love that
perfectly,
point.
you're stressed and tense and worried and you don't laugh. I mean,
Are
for people,
my numbers good enough? Is my blood sugar low enough?
Yeah.
And it is very much a practice. And I don't want to say that in the past 5 years, like it's great, I'm a monk now, whatever. Like it's work, and it's work every single day, especially in America and this world we live in, because you feel like you want to be in this activity the same way you think you want to eat the processed food or the sugar or something. And even though it doesn't make you feel better, it's such a habit, and that dopamine rush. Like we
Yeah.
went for a walk yesterday, and it always feels so good to get a walk in nature. Even if you're not feeling well, you always feel better, but you don't do it.
and
And
there's
so
data on that, and and it's like it's so dumb. Do I need data to tell me I do better if I go sit on the beach and relax? I have people that go on
Yeah.
vacation, and I have a guy just now. I just saw him yesterday. He went on vacation. He's like, Doc, I knew I was seeing you for the first time, and I just ate garbage the whole time I was there, and I didn't care because I knew you were going to take it away from me. But he goes, I ended up losing 6 pounds. And I'm like, yeah, because
yeah,
again, he has a majorly stressful job. And so, like, yeah, you cut the stress out and you do better. And this is what I'm getting at is like, okay,
Yeah.
I've seen enough times where people eat terrible on their vacation, they do better. I was just in Guatemala doing a medical trip, and it was a new team, and 85% of the people were new. So I said, I usually eat one meal a day. That's just what I gravitate towards. I'm fine with that. But just because you could do it doesn't mean it's the right thing for you necessarily, right? So I'm there, and I'm like, I'm gonna bond with these guys. So we bond. We have breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So I'm eating 3 meals when I usually eat one. And they're like, oh, you're in Guatemala. Here's a mango that I just picked off my tree in the backyard. Here's it. So
Yeah.
my diet was way more lax. My workouts were way lower than what they normally were. But we were surrounded by people who were just so blessed to have us there, and they were just loving on us, and all these good things happen. We're telling jokes at night, even drinking wine at night, having fun, and saying, "Hey, remember you said this wrong word in Spanish?" And everyone laughs, and we have a blast. So I come back, I lose 6 pounds. My buddy's like, "Hey, I lost 2 pounds." Like, how can that be? Like, we were terrible. I mean, I wasn't terrible with low. I try to stick to low carbs as much as possible in general. I just don't, eat most of the stuff. But if someone makes you a handmade tortilla, you're not gonna say, "No, I'm not gonna have that. That's not keto," right? So and then when I get back, but I'm like, how do I lose weight? And I see it all the time with my patients. So I have people go on vacation for a month and lose 23 pounds. I have people do, because they're in Europe, and probably the food is real too, so that makes a difference, right?
Yeah.
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 So we lived in Europe. We lived overseas. We talk about it all the time. It wasn't until we moved back to America that we just gained weight, and we eat the same way. It seems
Yeah.
like it.
We went through our keto process like that first 6 months, lost a lot of weight. And yeah, so then we stayed overseas for another year and a half ish. After that, maybe a little over a year. And we sort of stayed at that weight that we got to. And then when we came back to the US, even though we were still eating healthy, like literally organic things that we would buy at the
Well,
grocery
and
store,
it's mostly ketogenic, always low
and
carb,
ketogenic,
the same
yeah,
way we had been eating.
it was like somehow there was just always nuts available, and always
Costco
more
nuts.
cheese available, right? It was like, I don't know what we did, but there was just something about being in the United States where we both put on 10 pounds. Like, it was
And
so
maybe
weird.
it's the stress. Maybe it was just the energy, things like
Yeah, and
that.
stress and eating processed foods, and all those, even if it's not really processed, but you're like have access all the time. So
Yeah.
sometimes just being distracted or doing stuff you love and being around people who love you, and there's positive energy. And my whole talk was on Rosetto, Pennsylvania, where they just had community. That's why they had high
Yeah.
cholesterol, they ate fatty foods, they did all this stuff they shouldn't have been doing, and they lived. Why? They all relied on each other and had, so having people like you're building a community of people who said, okay, you have prostate cancer. Here's Tom who had prostate cancer. Here's someone with metastatic lung cancer. Here's someone like glioblastoma. That's a known responder to ketogenic diet. So you go, okay,
Yeah.
how does no one even talk about that? Even if
Yeah.
you're going through the standard of care.
Yeah.
You go ahead. Go
I
ahead.
was going to say really quick to just explain what you're talking about, because we were talking about this right before we started the podcast. Maggie and I started interviewing people that have used the metabolic therapies, in some aspect, any kind of metabolic therapy, really, and had a positive outcome. And so we've now compiled all these, and we're getting more and more every day on YouTube. And our goal is that if you have a cancer diagnosis, you can go onto that YouTube channel and find somebody that had a very similar diagnosis to you, and hear their story, right? Hear what they did. And this can kind of help people go down this path to doing metabolic therapies, just sort of help them understand what they can do for them. So yeah,
Because I
just
can't emphasize that, like, I'm not special. People talk about, oh, miraculous 5 years, lung cancer in the brain. I'm not. There are so many like me who just
yeah,
aren't as loud and in your face in telling their stories. So we're going to find them, pull them out, get them to tell their stories. Because again, if you're not listening to your doctor saying you're going to die in a couple of months, and you listen to yourself and your body and what it's capable of doing, and you hear the stories of other people achieving this, it's going to be, you're going to have more hope and confidence in your outcome.
yeah, we're really taking the grassroots approach to this. So hopefully
Yeah,
that.
I think a lot of us too, we don't think about how fragile life is. We're all going to come to our end, right? It's going to happen. So you're not just like, I can put it off. How long are you going to put it off? You're going to do cryo for forever, and all these things. You realize, okay, we're human. We're going to die. So how do I make the best of it? Right? It's how do I make the best of it? Going for those 5-minute walks is. I've never in my life, in my career, or in my life, ever had anyone tell me, you know what? When I was stressed out, I felt great. When I wasn't sleeping, I was stressed and I worried about everything. I felt great. Then I started controlling my stress, and everything went downhill after that.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. I've never met that person
Yeah.
yet who go, once I started just enjoying the sunsets and appreciating things that are around, like when you think you only have a few more sunsets left, you're gonna appreciate those sunsets or those times together, those laughters and that fun time. And when it keeps going, you go, okay, I'm gonna keep appreciating this, right? So many of us don't think about it. Like, how many times do you stop and go, okay, I'm gonna watch the sunset. I'm driving home during sunset time, or waking up early and seeing the sunrise, things like that, where you go, man, I feel my peace. But so many of us, we've lost our peace. And one of the trick questions I ask people the first time they come in is, hey, what do you do for fun? and they look at me like, what? Like it's like
Fun.
Yeah.
they have to think about it and go, when's the last time you had a good laugh? What was the last thing you laughed about? Like really just laughed, not like a
Yeah.
courtesy laugh like my jokes, but real stuff.
Oh,
And you
thanks.
see it, you see it and you go, wow, it does. It makes a difference. And so when people just smell the roses a little bit, because so many people are on overdrive, and you think, okay, and I thought that too. I go one more year and then I'll be established. Everything will be okay. One more year and I'll catch up. One more year and this.
Right.
So then, like you go, I got gray hairs and I'm still paying med school loans. And what am I doing? This
Yeah.
is at some point you go, this is crazy. Am I working this much to get it? I don't want a Ferrari. I don't really care about that. So you go, okay, what, is it financial security? And really for me, it was I had to provide for my patients. So if someone calls me Friday night at 5 o'clock and they're having chest pain, what am I going to do? Say, oh, I'm off the clock. No, you got to take care of the patient, right? You got to just take care of the stuff. So I think, and then also just seeing people like my advantage now in practice that like these people have been told over and over and over diabetes is a chronic progressive disease. Once you get it, like all we can do is manage it. And like, okay, here's 5 people that were on fat fiction that came off insulin. Like there's hope. Like if you
Yeah.
believe you can do this stuff. But when you think that it's not possible, you go forget it. It's not going to help anyway. So I'm just going to go back in. And one of the things I loved was Peter Ballard says, look, you're not going to take a basset hound, put him on the treadmill. Now it becomes a greyhound,
Yeah.
but you can make it the best basset hound it can be. So some of us go, I'm just genetically going to get diabetes. Like, cause my mom had it and everyone had it. It's like, well, they were eating terrible food and drinking and smoking all night and stressed out and hated the world. Maybe we change a couple of those variables, we can get better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny you brought up dogs. I was actually thinking that like one of the things that kind of brought us around was getting a puppy. Like it just makes us we have to take walks every day, gotta like sort of take him out. And then just sort of watching him experience the world. I'm possibly having children is like this too, but you just sort of are like, like just this idea of like like is what is important in life, right? Like it's just like laying in the sun, like just like having a little, treat, it's like he's just, yeah, it's really kind of lowered our stress levels a lot and made
And
us sort of,
studies have been done for that.
yeah,
Like,
Yeah, and
really
there's studies on that
yeah,
too. Like we don't need the
I've been
studies, but I'm
amazed.
telling you, there's studies on that. Like
Yeah.
companionship after a heart attack, they do better. If you're married, you do better. If you have a
Yeah.
relationship, you do better. And it's so important because there's studies like this. I've read this study. I go, this is the dumbest thing ever. But they took 65 and overs, and the only intervention they did is they go 1 hour a week. You're going to choir practice,
oh, I've read this. Yes.
and their
Yeah.
Go
their 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 stress level is down, their sleep is better, their self-reported health is better, and they have fewer doctor's visits. Why? I have
Wow.
people all the time that come to me because I'm their social outlet. They don't have anyone else to talk to,
Yeah.
right? But then there's people. I have a guy, as a matter of fact, I was reading through his chart over the weekend before he came in the first time. I was like, oh my gosh. I was gonna call my office manager and yell at her and go, what are you doing to me here? This guy has severe neuropathy, 1 foot amputated, blind in one eye, going blind in his other eye. He has on his surgery history, 62 and counting. I'm like, this guy's going to be a disaster. I don't know if I can help this guy. I mean, once you have metastatic cancer everywhere, it's hard to fix that problem, right? That's not a simple solution. I'm like, ooh, I needed more time with this guy. So I said, move him before lunch because this is going to be a tough one. I could tell. Then I could work through lunch, and I don't care. Then I'm not going to make everyone else wait. So, anyways, the guy comes in. I go, so we introduce ourselves, have a little first question. What do you do for fun? And he said, on Mondays I go to the VA and I help the wounded warriors. On Tuesdays I do this. I read books to kids, and I on Wednesday and I'm like, how do you do all that stuff? Are you kidding me? Because he goes, I'm retired now. And I said, why do you do all that stuff? He said, because I'd be dead if I didn't. He goes, I go and laugh and I help people and we have fun. And I'm helping other people. He goes, I forget all about my stuff. I was like, okay. And this
Yeah.
guy's been the easiest patients because he's had a bad hand dealt to him, but life of stress and childhood stuff and all that stuff took a toll. But now he's giving
Yeah.
back. So that's what you're doing in effect. Also, is like, okay, let me give hope to other people, right?
Yeah.
And it really is helpful. Like we started a nonprofit 501(c)(3 charity, giving our time to that. Like that's our full-time job now. And even though I hate thinking about cancer all the time, it does feel amazing to be able to help people and reach out and have that community and trying to
Yeah.
do what you do and bring the joy and the hope.
Yeah, Maggie kind of alluded to it later or earlier, excuse me, earlier. But yeah, the main thing that we're doing now is we want to get these metabolic ideas, the theory of cancer, and then the therapies that kind of go along with it out to people in a way that they could understand. And so we decided to make this docuseries Cancer Revolution that sort of talks you through, like explains to people on their couch, like you can just sort of sit back and watch a documentary and understand and grasp these things. And people are really using this as a tool to go to their doctors and talk about, these adjunctive therapies that they can do with standard of care, and kind of understand how the metabolic theory of cancer works. And it's very exciting. Yeah.
And you talked about some of the history, and I thought it was important that we talk about, like, why have I never heard this before? Because that's what I hear from so many people I coach or have told about my healing is like, well, my doctor never told me about it. It can't be true. But there are reasons that we haven't heard, and it's not a conspiracy. It's just the nature of our system and how scientific information gets out there.
Well, yeah, in the 17 years.
Yeah. Oh, and there's a study, Brian, I'm sure you've read it takes at least an average of 17 years
17,
for
yeah.
research knowledge to become clinical practice.
Yeah, I
Average.
would say it's even more than that.
Yeah, because you think about a Prozac or Viagra, sure, it'll be to market in no time. And the average of that is like 50, 70 years for an intervention that doesn't cost any money, like fasting or keto. And I do want to emphasize, obviously, no diet is going to cure cancer, but it has such an incredible impact on your outcomes, whether it's quality of life, increasing the efficacy of your conventional treatment, or, some people have found improved longevity even without standard of care. So it's just not going to hurt you is the thing. Some people, talk to your doctor, especially cachexia can be a concern. But things like exercise, stress reduction, there's nothing wrong with that.
Well, and that's what was great. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, just to finish that up. Yeah, there's studies done that doing a ketogenic diet actually prevents cachexia. So you could, a lot of times doctors just think that, if you're going on a ketogenic diet, you're going to be, eating fewer calories. But, that's not the only thing that happens to a ketogenic diet. It can be protective of your body and help keep you from having muscle wasting. So it's, most doctors that say that, they don't
even when you talk to them, even when you talk to doctors, you go, okay, what is a PET scan? Oh, what we do is we inject a sugar label, and it goes right to the cancer cells. We can see it. It's like, okay, if sugar's going right to the cancer cells, do I want to eat more sugar?
Yeah.
And so we worry so much about weight loss and cachexia. Go, when's have I put, and that's why I get excited when, as a matter of fact, I just had this conversation with one of the sponsors of the podcast, the health code people. I'm like, look at the seniors, if we can get them doing, but there's a guy I'm going to interview, I think next week, who's has people that are in nursing homes. And he says, look, they're not sitting on their butt all day. We're going to take them. And so these people come in bed bound. It's called a paradise for parents, and they come in bed bound, and he says, we're doing physical therapy. We're going to get their nutrition right. We're going to give them every chance to fly. And he has miracle stories. Like I stopped going to nursing homes because I go, I can't take it. Emotionally, it just drains me because people are drooling, looking at the wall, and they're not doing anything. There's no fun. There's no, and you see these guys intervene and you build a sense of community. And people I've always believed in community and how important it is. But the more I'm around it, when I was in Utah giving a talk, one of the guys there, his mom was a cancer doctor, and she on purpose, when people are getting their chemo and radiation, whatever, but she would only have one pole for IVs in the middle of the room. So everyone had to sit around that pole. And she said people would start talking, sharing their stories, telling about their grandkids and laughing and having fun while they're getting this treatment. Right. So he said that was probably more of the treatment than what they were putting in their veins, like just connecting with other people. And a lot of people are just, it's surprised. It's sad how many people, especially after the last 3 years, are just recluses. They're afraid to go outside. They're afraid to have community.
No, and I think about my parents. They're just like holed up in a house. Like they don't have a lot of, they don't get out, but sorry. Yeah.
No, it's true though. I mean, that's true when you're just sitting there waiting to die, really. And I've talked to people like that, and they go, okay, if I just died, that would be fine. I'm okay because I'm not doing anything that I enjoy. It's like, how about volunteering somewhere? How about going and reading to kids, doing something like my guy with the pirate patch? He's doing all this stuff out there, and you go, wow, that is like, he's contributing to society. He's making things better for everyone else, even though he's suffering, right? And you go, okay, I'm gonna make the best of it. So it's kind of what you're doing, going through this stuff and saying, okay, let's put all these people together. And it's really like, I know you made Tro cry too, and it's like, when you see it is like this Zoom meeting and you see all these faces of people telling their stories that they had terminal diagnosis, and you see so many of them on the one screen. It's so powerful. And you say, wow, what did they do different? Like, what is it? And the other thing, I think it's self-preservation. So for instance, when I get together with all the other low carb docs, I say, hey, what are you doing? What's working? What's not working? What are you finding? And we could talk about it. And you have people that are going to tell you, hey, when I got diagnosed, here's what I did. I started doing yoga or meditation, or I started painting rocks to get my mind out, whatever it is. I don't care, but you could pick up these little things and say acupuncture helped me, or, are there any modalities that are like that you go, yeah, a lot of people seem to be doing these same things?
Well, I guess some of the more evidence-based ones, mistletoe is really coming to the forefront. I think it's on the cusp of being part of the standard of care in South Korea, but there are some clinics here, and I've heard so many stories about that if I have a recurrence, that's the first place I'm going.
I heard Naisha Winters talk. I'm like, what are you talking about? Mistletoe? Is it Christmas? What are you talking about?
Yeah.
Like, and then I heard her talk and going through some of the data. Go, wow, this is pretty amazing, right?
It's
I mean, it's pretty
shocking.
amazing stuff.
It's
Yeah.
going to be the next. It might make it to standard of care before keto and fasting. Unfortunately,
Is
I don't
that
know.
for the summit? Is she talking about mistletoe?
We have a couple. We have a mistletoe panel with Mark Hancock and Nisha and Ivelisse Page, and it'll be audience Q&A, so people can ask their questions there.
Right. We were going to get to this, but we have a summit coming up where we're going to.
Yeah, let's talk about. I want to talk about that for sure. I definitely want to like let people know, because
So much
I just sent a link to a friend of mine who has cancer. Right, she gets a terminal diagnosis, and you go, okay, just watch this and listen. Like, that's a good couple hours of your time to spend. And then when you have experts coming on talking about it, then people say, oh, there are people who want to do it a different way, right?
Right. And so, well, the series really talks about the why. We were saying the scientists, the history, like, why haven't we heard about this? But we need to talk about the how. Like, how can I implement this myself? And that's not something Brad and I can do as reporters. So we brought in, we're so lucky, we have over 36 experts, like experts in the field, who want to give their time. It's online so that cancer patients can actually come. A lot of the presentations are a little bit more layman styles, although there's a lot of information for practitioners as well.
Yeah.
And we're doing these side by sides. You can watch episode 1, attend the summit. People like Tom Seyfried said he's going to be around to answer questions online for 2 days after his talk, and his 1-hour Q&A, on Zoom. So just all these people coming together to talk about it. And I don't know how it's going to go, but I hope it can be more frequent so that it can just be a way that people can get this information that we're talking about now. Like, what's the new emerging thing? So that's going to be fun.
How do people get to, where do they find it? How do they get to that?
Cancer Evolution 1R.events.
Yeah, that's the website, cancerevolution.events. Yeah. And then there's just if you want to register, there's a giant pink registration button, and you can
take a look at the people who are there. You can see the agenda right now. There's a link on the left for the agenda, and just marvel at these incredible people who will be there. And it does cost a fee. The series premiere is only donation based. You can even donate $0 if you need to. I know how expensive cancer treatment is. The summit is super It costs something to pay, so that payment, though, is tax deductible because we're a nonprofit charity. And for listeners of the show, we have a coupon code LBM20, so you get 20% off the registration. And my aphasia is acting up, so Brad will take it from here.
I was gonna say, just in case that wasn't clear, there's actually 2 parts to this. One is the summit, where you can hear all the people do their presentations, and that does have a cost, and that's where you use the LBM20. And the other aspect is that we've got 2 episodes of the 4-part documentary completed. And so you can watch those 2 episodes for any donation amount. That comes with the summit, but you also, if you don't want to have the summit, you can just watch those for any donation amount. So,
and they'll be notified of every subsequent episode.
Yeah, when they come out. Yeah, exactly. So, and did you get a chance to watch it last night?
I did.
Yeah.
I did. It was really good. Excellent. Well done.
I mean, plug it, right? Yeah.
Yeah, no, I thought it was great. And really, like, and for me, really, because I know a lot of the science, and I've heard interviews with Dr. Seyfried, and it's amazing. Like, I think he's 77, if I heard it right, and he's still going. And like, when are you going to retire? He goes, I'm never going. I love what I do. And like, if you have a passion like that, and I have people that work a lot, and I go, so how's your job? Like, I love it. I love going to work every day. I love the people I work. I'm like, okay. Right. And other people hate their job and they're miserable and tortured. And, as a matter of fact, some good advice, one of my best friends from high school said, like, we hadn't gotten together for like 2 years. He goes, Brian, do you know last time we had dinner together? You remember it? Like, I'm like, yeah, sorry, man, my life's crazy. And he said, Brian, if you were your own doctor, what advice would if your patient was
Oh,
you,
ouch.
what would you tell yourself? And I was like, yeah, I would say get the heck out of what you're doing, right? It was just not that easy. So many people are handcuffed to a job that they're miserable at, and they're under the pressure. I mean, doctors. I gave a talk in San Diego, and I had 8 doctors around asking like, okay, how do I get out? I can't take it anymore. I can't take it when I can't help my patient. I didn't go to medicine to be a cog in the wheel. And so many doctors are. So, my wife and I look back and that was the best decision ever. Just saying, I'm done. I'm done with the system. I'm
Yeah.
done with the game. I want to take care of patients, right? Because otherwise I'm going to be the patient, right?
Yeah.
How much do you need? What do you need to do? And if a system's broken, at some point you have to say, okay, look, I can't be part of this anymore. It's just so maddening. And the more you hear, the more you say, gosh, dang it. Doctors, their bonuses are based on how many statin drugs, how many chemotherapy. If you're not doing the standard of care, then you lose your bonuses. So they're like, okay,
Yeah.
then I gotta
And how
get
many
rid of patients.
patients they
Yeah.
see, right?
And how many patients you see, and it's a rat race, and it's really about efficiency. They're talking about people, how do you be more efficient? And they're seeing doctors melt down. I mean, at the conference we talked about number two group of suicide is physicians after
I mean,
people with PTSD from the military, right? So
these
it's
are
like,
highly skilled people. We need them. We need doctors, right? That's not what we want
well,
anywhere
it's
near the top of the
sobering.
suicide rate. It's terrible.
It's
Yeah.
sobering because these people have dedicated their life to helping other people, and they realize
Yeah.
they're not effective anymore. And they go, what's the use? And like
Yeah.
every day, 2 physicians kill themselves, and people
We've
don't
got
realize that.
a wonderful neighbor that lives right next door to us. She's an RN, and she's so jaded. She's just like, it's like all she wants to do is help people. And she's just like, the system's broken. I hate it. Like, and it's like, this is someone that all they want to do is help people. I mean, she's not like that all the time, but it's just like the system is sucking the this beautifulness out of the people that want to help. And it's just, yeah, that's definitely discouraging.
Well, and that's what I told these docs. I said, you guys have the worst prognostic sign for burnout. You care about your patients. When you care, the ones who are robots don't care. They're just a robot. They don't care. Like they're like,
Yeah.
oh, sorry, you got cancer. Okay, next patient, next patient, next patient. I don't have time to deal with this. And just looking at the the effects of like early childhood trauma, and it increases the risk of everything. And a big medical group, they said, hey, if you address these things, then we can decrease your office visits by 35% next year, ER visits by about 11.5, 12%, and it will save your system. Just in San Diego County, 3.5 million, I think, is the factor. And they said, no, thanks. Because what happens, they went back and pitched it to the doctors. The doctors are like, look, I have 8 minutes with a patient. I'm not talking about what happened 40, 50, 60 years ago. But all those
Yeah.
hurts and stress and unforgiveness, all those things play a role in cancer. We know that. I mean, it's very
Yeah.
clear. I mean, you go back to all Buddhism, Christianity, all these things like, hey, you know what? Being upset and vengeful and all this stuff is really not going to be in your best interest long term, right? We're all saying the same thing. It's like find your peace, be zen, whatever it is. But it's easier said than done, no question about it, because we have a lot of responsibilities. And it's the same thing when they talk about the Mediterranean diet. It's like, what about the Mediterranean lifestyle? These people took care of each other, and it was a
Right.
totally different community. So if you neglect that and you think it's just the food and food's critically important, don't get me wrong, but that's one part of the equation, watch your sleep, exercise, do stuff for your neighbors, be kind, engage with people. Like what you're building is this community of people that, so many of them say, they get a terminal diagnosis. You're like, okay, I'm done now. And then you have to
Right.
reassess what really matters.
Yeah.
And I
Well,
try not to judge those people either. Like, that's your decision. If you decide you're done with this life now, understood. But for people who aren't, there are these options. And that's all we want to do is present the option and not tell
yeah.
people what to do, what to eat. But if you do eat a certain way, it could improve your outcome.
And I mean, I think we, in our experience, a lot of people that have done these metabolic therapies, then they want to give back, right? They want to let other people know. That's part of why we have this whole playlist of people that, want to share their story. It's like they want to help others. And it's like, I mean, that like, I don't know. I just want cancer patients to like be that and like be positive and
They'll all
there's
be inspirations.
another way, there's a way through, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and also just hearing that, like Pablo, I love his story. There's so many that you have on there, and the one guy's funny because he's clearly had brain surgery. He's like, okay, and it was how long? And he turns to his wife and like, this is a married couple right here. Like, finish my sentence for me because I can't finish it, right? So you have to do that too with your stuff sometimes. To go, okay, you know what I'm saying here, so finish it.
Yeah.
So spouses are
Pablo's
good at that.
Actually, that was Ian is my
Ian.
inspiration because he was
Ian
willing to
and
go on
Abby.
screen and go onto this docuseries even with his aphasia, which is a little more severe than mine. And I was like, man, if he can do it, then I can do it. And so I was being inspired by our own videos. And I feel like something like that could help
Yeah.
others. And Doug from Low Carb USA really inspired me to
Yeah.
talk even when I
Yeah, and
can't.
he shares his story too about head trauma and like how it totally changed his attention span and his agitation level and all that. So, you have to deal with what you got at some point and make the best of it. And look, he's changing tons of lives and helping a lot of people, right?
Yeah.
Myself included. So it's great when you give back to the community because that's good medicine for you too, right? There's oxytocin thing we talk
Yeah.
about and lowering the cortisol. And you're like, but it's got to be stressful putting this movie together and getting all the documentary and clipping. I was thinking about when I was watching, that's a lot of work. That is a lot of work. It's a lot of work. It's
Yeah.
a lot of hours and a lot of dedication. But when you see it's worth it when you see, an audience watching it saying, wow, we created something that can really, really help people.
And
Yeah.
that was all Brad. Like he was a filmmaker. He is so talented. And to the point of like my personality, I was really pushing him on the deadline at the beginning. And like and we both really want to get it out as soon as possible. But once I learned to release that and be like, well, let's make the not quite the best documentary we can, but the best documentary we can make in a reasonable amount of time, then my stress levels went down, his did, and I really think things have just gone smoother since
Yeah.
then.
I mean, honestly, like apologies to those of you that I know are, just want more. And then we just are in that triangle of, good, fast, cheap, right? We get two, but not three. So we're going
Good and cheap.
good and cheap, but it's not fast. So yeah.
Yeah, and that's it.
Yeah.
But you put in your time, your effort, and it's gonna pay off. So I have to ask you both. I'll start with you, Brad. I'll give Maggie a minute to think about it. But what's life's best medicine for you? Where do you go to when things are down? What do you turn to when when your wife gets diagnosed with terminal cancer? Like where do you go for your peace and your hope and all that kind of stuff?
At that, like sort of the darkest moment, I just needed to sort of do nature. So I mean, I just was walking in parks, just sort of, getting fresh air, right? I definitely did not enjoy like just sort of sitting in our apartment or sitting in an office, right? It was about getting outside and moving, just work. That was my way of working through it. I feel like was just sort of just being active, right?
Mhm.
Nowadays, I do that a little bit because of the puppy, but I also have added this sort of morning routine where I mean, and not necessarily for acute stress, but just like it's a general stress. I like to get up in the morning and make my coffee and have like just a little bit of me time, right? And make sure I get up early enough that I don't have um uh, I'm not just like kickstarted right into my day. So that's my little, I don't know if it's even a secret, but that's what I do in the mornings.
And mine really is, I think, just Brad's love and support has been the best thing for me. But for those who don't have this incredible medicine,
Of
I
course, she
think
has a better answer. Yes.
meditation has been a huge help for me, along with movement.
Of
And
course, my wife's support. I'm so
Oh
sorry.
no.
Yes.
yeah, and I think that and for both of you, I think that meditating on stuff and just getting your peace, taking a breath, breathing, because you shut down this sympathetic overdrive we're all in Western society. And so what's your meditation routine like? How do you do it? How do you, you're in a
I
stressful
just try to do it
situation.
every morning, baseline 20 minutes, focusing on the breath. I'm not into guided meditations, but I know Brad,
Mhm.
sometimes we do them together. And then throughout the day, honestly, I will try to notice how I feel, especially when I'm getting stressed. And you're breathing, focusing on the breath is a huge help throughout
Yeah.
the day, all day.
Yeah,
I
I
actually
think that's
found,
such a huge thing too.
uh, yeah. I was gonna say I do like guided meditations, and I found a guy who just has a few videos up or a podcast up, and he isn't so much about like the relaxation because I would start to meditate and just be like really sleepy. And he was like, be alert, like listen to you, like your environment, like, even if your eyes are closed, like be aware of where you are. And I feel like a lot of meditations are like relax and like the spa music, right? And like this
Mhm.
guy is a little bit more like edgy in his meditation, but he was just like, be alert, listen to what's going on. And I really like listening to that guided meditation because it just grounds me more. I don't know. That's
Relaxed body, focused mind.
yeah, exactly. I like it. So
Do
it's
you do you
still
know his YouTube channel or whatever. So if people want to
The
listen to that.
guy's name is Michael Chackelson. He is from the UK, and he is a coach for like I found him when I was doing an MBA. He's like a business coach to try and get people to like be more productive. But he just made a podcast of these I think he has about like 20 like 10 they're like 10, 15, 20 minute like guided meditations. And I just really enjoy them because it's a little bit different. So but yeah, it worked for me because I just every time we would do like a guided meditation, I'd just be like,
Yeah, well, yeah, if you're going to sleep, that's great, right? But you got to get up and do your day. That's a little different.
yeah,
So I think that's all great. Listen to the birds, go outside and just chill, like,
yeah,
however your meditation is, prayer, meditation, spending time. There's studies showing that college students, if they just spent 5 minutes a day counting their blessings, that their stress levels and depression levels drop like 38% compared to the general. And you
yeah.
go, man, that's 5 minutes well spent,
Wow.
and
Yeah.
just,
Gratitude, that's the best medicine.
yeah, gratitude, right?
I answered
Gratitude.
wrong.
Yeah, yeah, no, gratitude too, right? Of being, look, I had a terminal diagnosis. I'm 5 years in. I should have been in 4.5 years ago. So every day is borrowed time now, right? So you go, I'm gonna make the best of it, that I'm not going through horrible treatments and I'm not going through all this stuff right now. And I could just wake up and enjoy my husband, snoring during the meditation time.
Yeah.
And
But
also,
things like that is finding your pleasure. Don't take life too serious. It's serious, but don't take it too serious where you're going to be stressed and tense. You got ulcers and headaches, and you come see me every day. And so, if I can intervene on a patient, my bet is I can get you doing better, and that we don't have to see you 20 times a week, right? So that's kind of that upfront investment that we do, and we go, let's figure it out. Like, where can we intervene on these 5 things that Ben Bickman talks about in life? But I think it's really like, and when you think about it, the other thing that's critically important that people, I never heard this until I was researching stress and gratitude and sleep and all this stuff, is that the vagal nerve that can make us pass out in 1 second when we get stressed or tense or get a needle stuck in our arm, that 85% of those fibers are afferent, meaning it's coming from your body to your brain. And your brain is like, look, you're hyperventilating all day, your heart's going fast, you're stressed, you're tense. And then it sends out all these stress signals that we don't want. So just doing those 5 minutes of breathing and relaxing and saying, okay, I'm not going to get too worked up about this situation, it's out of my control, whatever it is, just re-breathing and concentrating. It's telling your brain everything's okay. So why have
Yeah.
cortisol going through the roof? And, everyone says, what pill can I take for cortisol? Yeah, go sit with Brad and relax for a minute, look at the sunrise, right? Or whatever it is. Those kind of things are going to have more of an effect. And this is what I'm really looking at is, look, it's not just quantity of life and how long we live, it's quality of life. Like, we all want to live, and then you die and you go, okay, I went out and I did everything I accomplished. You'll be able to, this is your legacy you're leaving too, is having a movie that can help, a documentary that can help people, and getting all the world experts are together, out of their busy days. And it tells you about these people that they go, look, I'll volunteer my time and do it. I don't care. I want people to know what's happening. A lot of us give free talks because we know we can help people, and a
Yeah.
few of those people may become our patients in time. And then maybe we can intervene more. And so I think going through what you go through, I think it sends a message like, okay, I can't just live in stress and tense and not enjoy the moment. Like, what is life if you don't enjoy the moment? So when you go, okay, I'm just going to sit here and breathe and listen to my heartbeat or whatever, those kind of things, because we're on such fast overdrive. And, I have to thank Rob Sivas. He gave a talk about dopamine fasting, and it was a huge influence on me because he goes, just sit there for 3 days and do nothing. And I started getting stressed out, and I'm not a stress guy. But I was thinking, man, if I sat there for 3 days, how much I would never catch up again. I would be working
Yeah.
for 6 months to make up for those 3 days I wasn't productive. So sometimes not being productive is the best productivity you can have. And then you can think clearly, and get back on track. So if
Yeah.
employers are listening, I would tell you, look, take care of your people, treat them nice. And there's studies out there showing if you're a jerk as a boss, your productivity goes down. If you're nice and people believe in you and they want to help, they're going to come in on Saturday if they have to every once in a while or whatever, because they want to be part of the team. So yeah, all those things. But if you force people and you're nasty and bitter, it's like it kills you and the person that you're dealing with too. So sometimes just going, okay, we screwed it up. We learned something. Let's move
Yeah.
on, and we'll fix it next time, right? So all these are life lessons that is so great. I'm so happy to have you both on. And how about one more time for people who are interested, so they can, and you'll send me a link and I'll have it.
Yeah.
show notes.
Yeah, in
Yeah.
the show notes for sure.
So if the summit is cancerevolution.events, just one R, cancerevolution.events. You can also learn more about the film at cancerevolution.film. And it has a little synopsis of all the 4 episodes. And we also have a YouTube channel that has the aforementioned, Thrivers videos. And then it also has clips and trailers from the docuseries, and that is on YouTube. We are Cancer Evolution Doc, DOC, Cancer Evolution Doc, and again 1R. And yeah, we'll throw those to you for the show notes. Anything you want to add?
Just thank you so much for having us,
Yeah.
getting the word out. One of the many blessings that cancer brought me is knowing you, and this community has been wonderful. So looking forward to continuing to get the word out.
Yeah. And yeah, it was great to meet you in person finally at a conference. I know we had connected a few months ago, but yeah, it was awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm really excited about what you're doing. It's an honor to have you on, and I'm happy because I want my listeners to have the best quality of life, right? That's what I do a podcast for, you know. So, you know,
Yeah.
being able to say, hey, look, here's products that can help you, here's people can help you, here's things that can help you. Get rid of the garbage as much as possible. I don't need a randomized controlled trial to tell me sitting on the beach sometimes and thinking about stuff is healthy. Like I really don't need that. I know how I feel afterwards, or regrounding, or going out in nature and just enjoying the moment. Yeah, it's so critical. And I'm telling you, the tragedy is I see so many people who never enjoy the moment. You know, they think back and go, oh, that was fun 2 years ago when I did that. But it's like, you know what I mean? But at the time,
Yeah.
they didn't even appreciate it, you know? And so in life, you know, I mean, any of us can get a terminal diagnosis very quickly. And it's like, okay, what do I do when that happens? You know, that's like the worst case scenario for us. And, you know, some people are just going to fold up the tents. And, you know, you look at that with the relationship, but, you know, very commonly a husband will die and within a year his wife dies, you know, if they're really close related, because they're like, okay, what am I doing here? I just, you know, kind of give up, you know, so maybe stop taking care of yourself so much. And that, you know, these things are really critically important in medicine because, you know, I don't want people to go, I want you to say there's a hope. Let me go out and, you know, do videos and volunteer and go and tell people, yes, I had a terminal diagnosis and here I am now. There is hope. And the cruelest thing I think is taking away someone's joy and hope. Like, what the heck you do? I mean, you know, and so that may be why, you know, we're seeing partially why we're seeing so many more cancer and bad diagnoses now. Part of it was we couldn't, you know, make the diagnosis, but, you know, having cancers in 23-year-olds is not normal. I can tell you that, you know, recurrently. And so, you know, we have to figure out these problems, and, you know, a lot of this is political and you know, emotional. And so really, I would say anyone listening, look, this is a gold standard right here. This is like, these are people who get it. They understand, they want to help people. So if you have a family member with a terminal diagnosis, or you have a terminal diagnosis, then just listen, go check out this conference, because having hope has never hurt people. And when we talked about the placebo effect, there are studies showing that the placebo effect is like, okay, people believe they're taking a pill and helps them. But there's actually a big study they did looking at, if I tell you this is a placebo, you're
Harvard,
getting the
yes.
placebo.
That was a
You're getting
Harvard
the
study.
placebo. Harvard study. You get the placebo. You're getting the placebo. You're not getting the real medicine. You're taking the placebo. It's not going to do anything for you. And they hammer this in their head, and then they take the pill and they get better. Right.
Yeah.
Even though knowing, so some of it's subconscious that you think taking this pill is going to help you. Like, why would I take the pill if it didn't help me? And your body says, oh, I'll calm down a little bit because I'm taking something that may help this situation. And, you know, I mean, naturally, you look in animals when they're sick, they don't eat. Why? Because they're going to major ketosis. And maybe that's their last ditch effort. You know, Jason Fung and I have talked about this over the years.
Yeah.
With Parkinson's, I've had people with advanced dementia, they go into ketosis because they stop eating. And then all of a sudden they have a moment of clarity and say, oh, make sure you pay the bill. Here's where I put all the passwords and all this stuff. And they go, this person hasn't made sense for 2 years. And all of a sudden they tell, you know, they come alive for 10 or 15 minutes and tell all the important information. But all those things are critically important. We can't just say this is hocus pocus and it's out there. So people, be kind to yourself, be kind to others. Take those moments, laugh, have fun, reassess things. If things are stressing you out like crazy, say, okay, what can I simplify? What can I make better in my life? Now, you can't fix it all. Like, some of us are in a stressful situation. We're kind of stuck there, but maybe it's your perspective on that. Or maybe just saying, I'm going to take a minute in the chaos just to breathe and relax and count my blessings and pray or meditate or do whatever brings you that peace. But this is critically important information. So go to Cancer Revolution and learn about it. And thank you so much for joining me.
You're so
early
welcome,
in the
Brian.
morning.
Thank you. Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Our drive time podcast is perfect.
Awesome. Thank you for listening to this episode. We greatly appreciate your support. We would greatly appreciate a positive thumbs up on all of the platforms like iTunes and Spotify or wherever you're listening. And we just thank you for our Patreon supporters. We greatly appreciate your help in getting this message out. We think there's a lot of important information, and hopefully this helps you. Have a great day, and thank you for listening, and thank you for your support.